Take courage now and hold my hand, and together this war will be won. Together this war will be won.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this nice and beautiful program. It will be our first program of the year, and want to wish you happy New Year to everyone. And let's plan in this talk all together. Plan for a good start. Make our plans to see what can work for us so this new year can be better than the last one. And so everyone makes plans for the year. So in many of those plans, usually people that wants to change the way they eat. Why? Because um, good food keeps your body healthy, right? So tonight we just are going to plan a diet for our mind. And that is the program for tonight, Mind on Diet. And just as we pay attention to the quality of our food in a physical diet, in the same way, what about paying attention to the quality of our thoughts in our minds? We're going to learn how to nourishing elevated thoughts create the wealth of a healthy inner life. And for that, we have Sister Rona here tonight with us, who will um, give us some methods on how to keep our mind healthy with a um, healthy diet. Om Shanti to everyone. Here is Sister Rona.
Good evening, everyone, and also from my side.
Good evening, Sister Rana.
Mhm. All best wishes for more healthy 2021 and a year with more insights and maybe more special, not special, maybe more spiritual attainments also. But tonight's topic, mind on a diet. Usually, this period of the year, all the celebrations, generally we eat too much, and maybe not necessarily too much, but definitely lots of rich things. And then one of the things that we want to do in the new year is diet, lose some weight. And lots and lots and lots of focus is always on diet and dieting, not only for health but also for beauty purposes, and but very little attention generally is paid to the health and the beauty of the mind. And that is an area that may be even more useful for us to look at. Because healthy body, yes, that is definitely useful and worthy of our attention and efforts. But if our body is healthy but the mind is not, then we might still not know how to use the body properly. And we might still not be able to experience the, the joys of a healthy body. But also, health of the body is very closely related to the health of the mind. And we all know, no, that certain emotions affect our body. For example, we just have to see a big dog barking and showing his teeth and aggressive, and we are a bit fearful. And we all know that heart rate starts going up and all kinds of physical changes may happen just because of fear. And this is one simple example. If we are nervous, it has all kinds of physical manifestations. And so the condition of the body and the physical reactions are closely related to what is going on in our mind. In our mind and in our subconscious. And though lots of attention always is paid to quality and conditions of the physical body, how much attention do we pay to our minds? And so mind on a diet, what it implies is that there is too much going on in the mind, and that the mind is fat and sluggish and full of wrong food. Now, one of the things that, one of the functions happening in our mind is mind gets filled with all kinds of thoughts, usually. Now, you could describe or understand the mind as a stage on which all kinds of thoughts can just pop up. All kinds of thoughts emerge, and they are triggered by external situations, by sense experiences. Thoughts are created in the mind based on what we see, what we hear, what we can touch, what we taste, what we smell. And thoughts are being triggered from past memories and past impressions. Thoughts are created, active, conscious thoughts are triggered in the mind based on certain patterns of thinking and habits in our subconscious. And that pushes thoughts on the stage of the mind. Now, for example, say if there, from the past, growing up, there was the habit of eating hot soup when it was winter, and if it is cold. If that is a certain behavior pattern, a certain experience pattern from the past that is stored in the memory base, in the subconscious. And moment it gets winter or it is cold and wet, thought comes, let's have soup. No. This is just one simple example. If there is some experience of kindness from certain persons in the past, the moment you see that person, those thoughts come in the mind. So mind is like a stage on which all kinds of thoughts are triggered. And we experience those thoughts. And those thoughts can be all over the place. Those thoughts can be from anything, and those thoughts uh, do not necessarily have any logical, what is it, organization. If the mind is just let to, to freely to create all kinds of thoughts. And every thought that the mind has carries with it certain emotions and certain feelings. And every thought carries with it a certain attitude and comes from a certain intentions and feelings. But generally we think so much, and thoughts are all over the place and from all kinds of different things that we generally do not notice. And there is usually not the time to allow a certain thought to flourish into feelings and emotions. And sometimes the deeper patterns in the subconscious are so strong that we don't even hardly notice the thought or the thought patterns, and we just feel in a certain way. You get up in the morning and you have a certain feeling of what? Uh, you're in a good mood, you have a feeling of enthusiasm, or another day you're feeling a bit down, and you do not necessarily consciously trace that to specific thoughts, but you just feel in a certain way. Because this mind and the subconscious part of the mind, it is all active all the time and creating all kinds of thoughts and feelings and emotions. And much of those uh, thoughts they might be not even properly structured, and they might not even make sense, or they might even be opposing thoughts, or colliding thoughts, or clashing thoughts, or thoughts that have no connection with one another at all. No, we do not necessarily build on certain themes in our thoughts. We just have at random all kinds of thoughts. Now, if the mind is left in that stage, all kinds of thoughts all over the place all the time, we are exhausted at the most, at the least. We get exhausted. And also a deeper underlying feeling can come of uselessness, a feeling of not of confusion or not clarity, not being in clarity. And our psychologists and psychiatrists and social scientists who study this phenomena of the mind and thoughts connected with human behavior, they tell us that these are studies in the 80s, 1980s, this is like 40 years ago. At that time, they said on average, human beings have about 30,000 thoughts in a day. But this was before your mobile phone and internet and Twitter and all of that phenomena. So it is very easily doubled now. And so 60,000 thoughts, which all have their world around them of attitude and vision and intentions and feelings and emotions, that all jumbled up in our mind, ongoing, triggering thoughts, 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 thoughts. Now, this is not a very useful state for your mind to be in. This is not a very useful condition for the mind to be in. And on top of that volume of thoughts, we haven't even talked about properly the content of those thoughts. Let's say, like in the city of New York, Manhattan. Of course, now with the pandemic, it is less. But say in the city, there are what, um, some 100,000 cars in the space of a few blocks, and they all drive in circles, in circles, and there is no order and structure. They just all drive all over the place around. Traffic will get jammed, no? Traffic will get stuck. And ultimately, no one gets anywhere. Everyone just gets frustrated, and nothing gets done. So if you think of your thoughts as cars driving around, if they don't have a proper aim, a proper destination, a proper speed, if they don't take into consideration other cars that are also on the way, it just gets like a big traffic jam up here and nothing gets done. No one, none of the thoughts are properly reaching their destination in the terms of a result. So, what to do with this mind? What to do with this mind that is full with all these useless thoughts and all these cyclical thoughts, all these repetitive thoughts? Because much of these 30,000 thoughts, many of those thoughts are the same thoughts over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now, if you truly observe your own mind and check your thoughts, you will see that we just have a few themes that we continuously repeat in our heads and produce thoughts around. And of course, the topic, the theme of your thoughts is maybe different from other people's, but many of them are cyclical. The same thought over and over and over and over again, just like that car that just goes around the same block, circling, 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 doesn't go anywhere, just wasting fuel, wasting energy. So a mind on a diet has different aspects. Now, one is the volume of thoughts. Another thing is this repetitive, cyclical nature of thoughts. And the other aspect is the content of your thoughts. And then even another aspect is the strength of that thought, any thought. So observing your thoughts will be like a first step in a mind on a diet. It will be like a first step in terms of learning to take as if a step back instead of observing the world around, observing the people around, and observing the objects and the situations and the circumstances and what is happening in the world. All of that is there. It is not that we deny it, and it is also not that we ignore it, but at the same time, we are also aware that there is also this inner world, the world of my thoughts and my feelings, and to step back, step inwards, and to begin to also observe what is going on here. And how useful is it, what is going on here? Because to be very honest, the quality of your life is very closely related to the quality of your inner life. Your experiences and how you feel and your mood and how you feel about self and how you feel about your life is big part dependent on the quality of your inner life. And in the world today, we pay so much attention to quality of outer life and make so much effort to have things at outer level in order, and nothing wrong with that. But how much attention do we pay on the quality of inner life? And so the first step would be to just step back. And another word that we could use to describe that is to become more introvert and observe the quality of your thoughts. And ask yourself, are these thoughts useful or not? Are these thoughts damaging or not? Are these thoughts uplifting or not? Are these thoughts insightful or not? And doing that, that is another function of the psyche that does that. That does the observing, that does the discerning, that does the analyzing, the filtering of thoughts. That is what we call the intellect. That is another function of the human consciousness, of the soul, of the psyche, the intellect. And so it is the intellect that steps back and says, okay, what is going on in this mind? What is going on this stage inside? What is in that inner world that may be redundant, that may be useless, or that may be even sick? A sick mind would be a mind that produces all the time all kinds of useless thoughts like guilt or hatred and revenge and plotting and scheming and inciting negativity. That would be like an ill mind, a sick mind. Or shame, feelings of shame, or lack of confidence, or jealousy, all those kinds of thoughts. These are the product of inner illness. And for illness of the body, we do so much, to create health of the body. There is all kinds of therapies and all kinds of medication, and now with the pandemic, so much intelligence and time and effort and money is put in the production of a vaccine, which is excellent. Good that that is happening. But how much are we even aware of the infection at the level of the mind? Now, all these viruses going on in the mind, it creates damage. It is illness of the soul. It is illness of the mind. It is illness of consciousness. And we should not allow it. But first step would be just to become aware of what is going on. And aware, because one thing is to know that you are sick, but the other thing is you are sick, but you don't even know that you are sick. That is what has happened with our minds. And because we're not aware, we just accept it and start to think that it is normal and natural to have these kinds of thoughts and these kinds of feelings and to be stressed out and to be thinking all kind of thoughts of victimhood or begging or bad mood or angry or stressed out, because the mind has been in that state for a long time, doesn't make it natural and doesn't make it healthy. And just because many people are thinking like that and behaving like that, still doesn't make it healthy and natural. It just shows that we are not aware. And so to as if wake up this intellect, this power to observe your mind and to analyze and to filter and to discern and to put a stop and say, wait a minute, these kinds of thoughts are actually damaging for the self and diminishing tremendously the quality of inner life. And if the quality of inner life is low, then how can the quality of outer life be high? Even if the circumstances are favorable, I am not able to even be recognizing the beauty of it. I will not be even be able to acknowledge or be grateful, because inner life is sick. Inner life is damaged. And when there are challenging external situations, I definitely will not have the mental stamina to deal with it, to create an attitude or a certain approach that can turn things around in a more positive way. And so the function of this intellect needs to be as if sharpened and needs to be, intellect has to be woken up and used in a accurate way. And intellect should say, okay, these thoughts go on, these thoughts full stop, these thoughts should be completely deleted, they are absolutely useless. Double delete button, you don't keep them in the trash can, even then if they empty the trash can, finish. Mind on a diet. No more these thoughts, full stop, delete. Or what do they say? Double delete. And this mind on a diet, it has to be combined with that intellect. And intellect, the word don't necessarily, don't, how you say that, confuse it with intelligence or IQ, uh, or some intellectual education or university degree. It has nothing to do with that, actually. It is your basic wisdom of how you deal with life, your power to discern what is useful, what is not, what is based on truth, what is based on falsehood. The function of intellect. And intellect doesn't have anything to do with your schooling or your level of education and degrees that we have. Because people may be masters of some whatever, have their master degrees, but still mind is fat and sluggish and can be diseased, and intellect not working properly for general things in life. Now, they might be good at their studies or they might be good at certain things, but other areas of life are in a jumble. So this intellect, this function of the intellect to step back and to start observing what kinds of thoughts are generally popping up. And this is a very beautiful game. During the day, going about your physical activities and interactions, instead of having the focus out there, observe what is going in the mind, going on in the mind. And to encourage certain kinds of thoughts, to stop other thoughts, to delete certain thoughts and thought patterns. And then also observe what the result is of that observations and certain precautions and a certain vigilance and a certain discernment and a more alertness to choose more healthy thoughts. And from my own observation and from the observation of those with whom I study spiritually and with whom I share exchanges and insights, more one is aware of what is going on and more one is able to guide the thoughts in a specific, more constructive, more useful directions, one generally also feels better about self, feels better in terms of mood, uh, in terms of generally the what is the word, a certain lightness or heaviness that we feel. There is less burden on the mind also. And also what we observe is more that this intellect is vigilant about what is going on in the mind. the way we respond to situations or to others or to ourselves also is usually more constructive and more positive and maybe even more elevated. But also more that this intellect is wise and using wisdom. Sorry. Um, more the power also to concentrate on just certain types of thoughts or certain themes around which we build our thoughts and thought patterns. And many of us would like to have more power of concentration, isn't it? So we need to, as if, wake up that intellect and of course, expose ourselves to, to certain wisdom, wisdom about life, wisdom about perspective on life, wisdom about spiritual approach to life, wisdom about even the dynamics of consciousness. Intellect needs to become more broad and more far-sighted to be able to guide the mind properly. And where do these thoughts that pop up in our mind, where do they come from? What is its origin? The origin of all these different thoughts that just pop up in our minds. And all that is also the intellect that can start observing, where are these thoughts coming from? Why do I have so many thoughts of worries around my children? Or why do I have so many thoughts of guilt around this specific person? Or why do I have so much thoughts and stress around certain working situations, or with my boss or my colleagues? Or why do I have so many thoughts around money, money, money all the time? And we need some reflection on those things, no? Because we take it for granted. We think that is normal and that always has been the case and everyone is like that. And so then all these thoughts just continue to spin in our head all the time, making us sick here. And sooner or later, that will also manifest at the level of the body. So where are these thoughts coming from? And there may be difficult situations. There may be a certain situation with boss. There may be certain concerns with children. There may be some issue with health. There may be some issue with money. But thinking and thinking and thinking and cyclical thoughts, repetitive thoughts about the same topic doesn't resolve anything. It just makes the mind weaker, makes our response more weak, makes us physically sick. Doesn't resolve anything. It just makes it worse. So in order for us to deal with those situations better and to have a different perspective so that we can act differently and feel differently, we need a mind that is healthy. And to not just take it as if it is normal and it is natural and everybody is like that, and as if life just happens to us and it just is like that and we are victims. We can't change it. We can't change the way we think because that is how it is. It doesn't have to be like that. Every individual has the power to choose their thoughts and has the power to analyze where thoughts come from and what are the deeper, what is it? Can't find the word for it. The deeper roots of certain thought patterns and certain repetitive cyclical thoughts. And the spiritual knowledge of Raj Yoga and of the Brahma Kumaris tells us that the root of all these different kinds of thoughts is much deeper and is at the level of our beliefs and our impressions about who we are, no, and our sense of identity. And so, for example, if the identity within me of being a mother, if that identity, and that identity, another word for that is ego. No, I identify with a certain role, the role of mother. If that ego is strong, if that identity is strong in my subconscious, build up over time, thinking and thinking, I'm a mother, acting as a mother, thinking about motherly duties, that identity has grown strong, then that identity will flood my mind with thoughts about children. And if that identity is also combined with deep feelings of attachments and dependency, and that identity is dependent also, it's attached to children, then thoughts of children will flood the mind constantly. And those thoughts can be rational and they can also become irrational. And they can become cyclical, they can start being so loud and overwhelming that they just take over your mind. And in any kind of situation and any kind of circumstances, there are all the time these thoughts, children, 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 children. First of all, there was a time when you did not have children. There was a time when that identity of mother was not active because there were no children to be mother of. So first of all, that is not the eternal reality of you, the soul, the inner being. It is just a part that you play temporarily. And for that part to take over your mind, it is not useful. No, so and someone else or that same person may also have a big identity around what career, that I am a good, I am a doctor, and whatever. If that identity is big, that will also trigger all kinds of thoughts flooding the mind. But there may be other identities based on nationality or race or culture or religion or the football team or your financial position, your social position, your belief system. All kinds of ego can be there stored in the subconscious, and they all want to push thoughts on the stage of the mind. And then this intellect has to kind of steer that mind that is being flooded with all these thoughts. Now again, back to spiritual knowledge and the practice of meditation. Which identity is the most useful identity to function with in the consciousness? Which identity is true? No, because mother, the identity of mother, yes, it is true, but it is not eternal. It does not define the being that you are. It defines a role that you play for a temporary period of time. So to truly come back to the essence of who you are and to let thoughts emerge from that, that would be truly a healthy state of mind. Now, so who is that real self? The one who plays the part of mother, who plays the part of doctor, who plays the part as a inhabitant of a certain country or a certain practitioner of a certain religion or non-religious, or who is that inner being, the experiencer, invisible being of consciousness who uses this body temporarily. And to put our mind on a diet means to come back to the essence of the being that we are, the soul. And the real self transcends all those egos, all those temporarily acquired identities. The being, the invisible experiencer, is a spiritual being. that, and the being comes in the body when the body is in the womb of the mother growing, a little embryo, not even embryo, it is like 3 months old, 3, 4 months of pregnancy. That is when the consciousness enters and then gets associated with the body. Body gets born, physical personality evolves, and the different roles and parts that we play. And then as time goes by, body grows older, and then the physical personality also grows older. And at some stage, soul leaves the body again. That being of consciousness transcends the body and transcends the end of this body also, because the being existed before this body took shape also. So to think of the self as a spiritual being, invisible being of consciousness, an experiencer or a traveler through time, through space, and playing different parts, experiencing the scenery and the physical dimension, the exchanges and the interactions, but traveling, moving on. Now, in that awareness, we played a certain part for a period of time, but there's no need to get attached or dependent or identify with any part, because the real identity is of this timeless, immortal, spiritual being of light. And from that identity, thoughts of peace and thoughts of security, thoughts of brotherhood, thoughts of appreciation easily emerge. From that awareness, there is no fear, because even the body was a temporary gift from nature. And sooner or later, I will have to give back. What is there to be scared about? It is the natural flow of existence. Soul gets associated with the body and then leaves the body again and continues the journey. And the soul is the real self, not the body. It is not, I am a body and I have a soul. No. Or I am a bodily being and I have a soul. No. I am the soul. And temporarily, we are associated with this body, with the physical personality. The spiritual being, the real self, belongs to the spiritual dimension, world of light and the home of souls. It belongs to that family of spiritual beings of light. It belongs to the Supreme Being, God. Is like the Supreme Being in nature. And so mind on a diet would mean to observe, step back, observe all the thing going on, but also identify the seed of all these thoughts and identify all these different egos and recognize how silly to completely identify with something temporary and then create all kinds of attachments and dependencies and all kinds of thoughts and complicated thoughts and emotions based on something temporary and not even who I truly am. And so the process of meditation is simple. Just nurture that soul awake state, that soul consciousness, where there is that awareness with conviction that the real self is this timeless traveler, invisible being of light, one who is a guest in this body, a guest in this physical world. And from that perspective, take decisions, and from that perspective, interact with others. And from that perspective, it becomes much more easy to give instead of to take and to need and to want and to demand, but to share and to care and to appreciate. Then life becomes a gift, and every interaction becomes a gift, and every situation becomes a learning situation to grow. Mind on a diet. So if anyone has some thoughts or questions, maybe now is the time. Not sure. I saw that there were some things in the chat mentioned. And then we can close with some meditation. But first, some questions. Are there any questions in the chat box? Jose, I can't really read.
Yes. Also, whoever has a question, you can unmute yourself. And there is one question on the chat box that is: could the intellect be also referred as the silent watcher, having the ability to be aware of our thoughts and replace them with healthy thought process?
Yeah. That is definitely a function of the intellect, a big, important function of the intellect. Yes. But then we did not really go into that too much, was much more focused on the mind today. But the intellect also needs wisdom. No? You can have a weak intellect and a limited intellect, but more the intellect gets exposed to spiritual wisdom, to God's wisdom, intellect grows stronger, and intellect can even become divine. Intellect can even become selfless and unlimited and wise. And a wise intellect can guide the mind best. But yes, that is definitely a function of the intellect.
There is another question from Mita. Again, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Mita is asking, what diet food would you suggest?
The best, the best, the best, the best, the best food would be constantly just churn and think about thoughts of the real self, the soul, and the perspective of the soul. So that in any situations, thoughts will be from that perspective of eternity, from that perspective of being a guest and a traveler, from that perspective of being part of the family of souls and belonging to God. And if thoughts come from that identity, those are the highest thoughts. That would be the best food. And what you will also notice is those kinds of thoughts, they are usually powerful and few. They are not so many, one after the other, after the other, after the other. But we might not be in that soul awake state all the time.
Yeah.
So what kinds of thoughts can I actively hold in my mind uh, to as if be in that direction? Those are thoughts where you are reflecting and thinking on certain uplifting themes. So it is good for all of us to every day have have an agenda for your thoughts. Because idle mind is the devil's workshop. So if you don't give your mind a specific focus or a specific direction, it will go all over the place.
Yeah.
And it will be like a ping pong for all these different egos that are there. So give your mind a certain specific theme every day to reflect on. No, and it can be any theme from spiritual knowledge. But also, apart from that, but it is good, no? Like we have an agenda for what to do every day. Also keep an agenda of what you are going to think about more deeply every time when you are free in your mind, so as to keep your mind occupied. And there are many moments that your mind is free. When, for example, when you're in the shower, preparing, getting dressed, when you're eating, when you're what going to do groceries. Mind doesn't have to actively be involved in every second. Those are many, many times that the mind is free. So have a theme ready. Use the intellect to create thoughts in the mind around your chosen theme that is constructive, that is uplifting, and that may even be elevated or spiritual in nature. So keep the mind engaged in something uplifting, and that you have to choose for yourself what your interests are, what your areas are, what your aim is. But the highest, the highest, the highest would be thoughts of spiritual wisdom, thoughts concerning soul consciousness. And another thing to do with your mind is always try to have an attitude of learning. Now, whatever the situation is like, whatever the interaction is like, however nasty someone may be, if I approach that situation and use my mind with that attitude of what secret is here for me to learn, then you keep your mind in a healthy space. Instead of blaming or feeling guilty or getting angry or getting stressed out or nervous, that just makes you weaker. But if there is that attitude, okay, what is here to learn? What deeper insight does this give me? Or what power does it emerge or calls me for? Then you're using an unpleasant circumstance, but you're enriching yourself and you're keeping the mind healthy.
Yes,
Attitude of learning.
yeah, very good.
Okay, one last question. When thoughts enter during day, are there any meditative phrase you can use to stop the thought?
Uh, um, this is what is, Rona, don't have experience with chanting, no? Or a certain phrase and using that phrase and then things finish. I know there are, um, um, what is it? Organizations and movements who practice that type of meditation where there is a chanting going on or a repetitive phrase or certain affirmations. I have personally never used that method, but those whom I know who have, what is observed is because they use a certain phrase and focus on that phrase or on that word, it keeps out other thoughts. So that in itself is might give some temporary relief. But in this meditation practice, that is not really the aim. The aim is to understand where thoughts come from and to shift the seed of those thoughts. So if there, like the example that I gave is that there are thoughts of constant worry about children, then not to use a certain word, maybe om, om, om. Okay, the thoughts of those worries will at that moment not be in the mind. But I haven't changed that ego behind those thoughts. So the moment I'm not chanting anymore, the moment I'm not in that focused, concentrated, repetitive phrase or affirmation, thoughts will come back and flood the mind again. So in this meditation, the aim would be to reinforce the soul identity and to create thoughts and images in your mind that reinforce that soul identity. So even if you say the phrase, I am a soul, if we are not using it with that deeper understanding and conviction, then it just becomes an affirmation or a chanting, which just temporarily gives some relief, but it doesn't change the root of all those thoughts that you want to get rid of. So to say one word or one line, you could say soul or I am a soul, but that will only bring some temporary relief. And you might as well use any other word also. But to really put things right at the level of the seed, we have to grow in the right positioning, in the right identity, and really understand and experience the self to be that living, conscious, timeless being of light. Okay. Well, very nice being with all of you. Nice to see Mita.
Same here, sister. It was very good subject.
Nice to see Eloisa also, all the way from the Philippines. Let us close with a few moments of silence. And use this silence not to step back, observe the thoughts, but also deeper. Become aware of the self as a being of consciousness, timeless, invisible, living light. And if you want to use an image, then that image can be of a tiny star. Operating from the center of the forehead, sitting behind the eyes. Timeless, living, pure light. And this invisible being is the real self, the soul. One who is a guest in this body, a guest in this physical world. Temporarily visiting. The real self is a timeless, invisible experiencer. Innately peaceful, imperishable, living light. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Shanti, sister. Thank you.
Om Shanti, Sister
Thank
Rona.
you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
And
Thank you.
see you back.
That's it. Thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
you so
next
much.